Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to do more of solving radical equations. The first thing I want to start with is looking at something like number one. Number one is like the more challenging problems that you had yesterday. When I look at my x squared, I ask myself, is my x squared all by itself? No, it's not. So I need to divide both sides by 9. When you do that, you're left with x squared is equal to, in your calculators, divide out 16 by 9. What do you end up with? Exactly, you have a repeating decimal in the calculator. Because we have that, what we're going to do is we're going to leave that fraction as a fraction. Then you ask yourself, how do I undo a square? I'm going to square root both sides. When I square root both sides of my equation, I get x is equal to, if you look at that 16 and 9, do you recognize that those guys are perfect squares? Great. So what we're going to go ahead and do is write down the square roots of both of those. The square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 9 is 3. So 4 over 3 is what x is. But don't forget, you also have your negative of that. So negative 4 over 3. So my exact answers are 4 over 3 and negative 4 over 3. The way I get my decimal answers now is I have to divide that in my calculator. So if you type in 4 divided by 3, you get, right, 1.3 and negative 1.3. Great job. The next one I want to skip to is number 4. Now, number 4 is the larger problem. It has the most amount of steps. So when we look at number 4, again, we're trying to get our x squared term by itself. The first thing I want to do is minus 5 to both sides. So I get a negative 3x squared is equal to, what is a negative 187 minus 5? Great, a negative 192. The key here, what makes this problem tricky is you have a lot of negatives. So make sure you're paying very close attention to those. Now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3. So I get x squared is equal to, good, a positive 64. Now that I have my x squared by itself, I can square root both sides, and I get x is equal to, what's the square root of 64? 8. And what else? Negative 8. And because these are whole numbers, there is no decimal approximation. Great. So let's go ahead and flip to the back side of the notes and see the problems that are new to us today. Right away, when you look at these, do you see how we have an x minus 5 in parentheses and that whole quantity is squared? So our whole goal today is to make sure that those parentheses are completely by themselves. So we have nothing being multiplied on the outside of it or nothing being added or subtracted outside the parentheses. So when we look at number 5, there is nothing outside it. On the left-hand side of the equation, all we have are our parentheses squared. Because that's all we have, I'm going to rewrite it. I have x minus 5 squared equals 25. Because those parentheses are all by itself, I'm going to jump to my square rooting. How today differs is this x minus 5, we're going to write it down 2 times. This little 2 right here says that we have to write it 2 times. So x minus 5 equals, and x minus 5 equals. Then what you have to do is square root 25. What are my 2 possible answer choices? Well, it's a 5 and a negative 5. So to recap that, I had to square root my parentheses. Because that outside number is a 2, I had to write the equation 2 times. Now I can go ahead and solve my new equations I wrote. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So my first number is x equals 10. Now I'm going to add 5 over here, and I get x is equal to, what's negative 5 plus 5? 0. So my 2 answers are 10 and 0. Because these are whole numbers, there is no decimal approximation. Okay, so let's look at another one. Again, I'm looking at that term that is squared. My parentheses right here, is there anything being multiplied or added to it? Nope, there's not. I'm just going to rewrite it so that way you guys can see it with no marks on it. I know this can seem confusing to some of you. Just make sure you take your time and really think about what I'm showing you. Because those parentheses are all by themselves, we're going to square root both sides. Again, this 2 tells us I have to write the parentheses 2 times. So x plus 3 equals, x plus 3 equals. And then I ask myself, what is the square root of 81? You guessed it. It's 9 and negative 9. Now I can go through and do my solving. So this plus 3, how do I move it over? Good, minus 3 to both sides. So my first equation is x is equal to 6. I'm going to go through and do the same thing on the right-hand side. I'm going to minus 3 to both sides, but this time x is equal to a negative 12. So my two answers are 6 and negative 12. Again, decimal approximation, there is none because these are whole numbers. How is this feeling? Is it feeling pretty good? Good. So let's go ahead and look at number 7. Looking at number 7, again, these are the parentheses I'm looking at. So if I kind of put a little box around it, those are my parentheses. Do you see how there's that 3 on the outside? So before I can do any work at all, I have to first get rid of that 3. Now remember, that 3 is attached by multiplication. So how do I undo multiplication? Good. I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So when I do that, I end up with x minus 2 squared is equal to 9. Now that I isolated that squared term, now I can go through and square root both sides. I can't write my two equations until I square root it. Now that I square rooted it, I have x minus 2 equals x minus 2 equals. So what is the square root of 9? Great job, 3 and negative 3. You are doing amazing. So to solve these little equations, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So I get x is equal to 5. Great. Over here, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and I get x is equal to, awesome, negative 1. So my two answers are 5 and negative 1. There is no decimal approximation. Okay, one more. Let's give it a shot. Again, I'm looking at my parentheses. So I'm going to box them out. There's my parentheses. Is there anything outside the parentheses I need to get rid of? Yes. I need to divide both sides by negative 2. When I do that, I have x plus 4 squared in parentheses, and then I need to carefully punch this into my calculator. What is negative 72 divided by negative 2? Great job. It's a positive 36. Now that I've isolated my parentheses, I can go through and square root. Remember, I can't write my two equations till I do that square root. That 2 right there tells me that I have x plus 4 equals 2 times. And then what is the square root of 36? Right, 6 and negative 6. So now what do? Good, minus 4 to both sides. So I get x is equal to 2 minus 4 to both sides. Carefully watch your signs here. It's not negative 2. Negative 6 minus 4 is a negative 10. So my two answers are 2 and negative 10. Again, because they're whole numbers, there is no decimal approximation. So a couple things I want to make sure I point out to you. Yesterday, we got positive and negative answers that were pretty much the exact same. Today, you won't have that happen that much. You're going to have two different answers. Sometimes they both might be positive. Sometimes they both might be negative. Sometimes you're going to have one positive, one negative, but the numbers should be different majority of the time. So great job today. I would like you guys to go ahead and try to do the problems on the classwork. I want everybody to make a real attempt at it. I know this could be a little bit challenging for some of us, but I want to see us really push through and rewatch the video and talk to each other about math. Remember that about math, and see if we can come up with a great understanding of this. Tomorrow when I come in, we will go through this some more, but I do want to see that everybody makes a real attempt on their homework. If you have any questions at all, feel free to email me. Thanks and have a great day. Bye.